in San Pedro, Laguna, Luzon, and you are all in Eastern Visayas. I'm very happy to be with you this afternoon. So back to business. I want to first talk about some expectations check. So first, I want to say that this session is a review and realignment of our knowledge about early language acquisition and development. And the inputs I am to share with you this afternoon are drawn primarily from my experiences and learnings in my PhD study in LaSalle to doing research that's themed under the psychology of language and teaching. And my most recent published works are on the topic, and that is primarily where I am coming from with this afternoon's talk. This, however, will not prescribe pedagogies. I am, as a person also, and as a linguist, I'm not a prescriptivist. So this afternoon, I won't tell you what exactly should you do and what should you not do, but I will instead, I will hope to provide guides and possibilities to make language learning and teaching still rich, impactful, and meaningful in the time of COVID-19. Into law, and I received this because I'm a member of this this group in Telegram. In the Telegram app, the president approved the proposal to allow limited face-to-face classes in low-risk areas. I don't know exactly if the region is a low-risk area, but another added information about that is such limited face-to-face classes will only commence in January 2021. So for the rest of the year, we will have to make do with our teaching and learning context, and we have to simply try our best to still be able to carry out our tasks, even as we cannot do teaching and learning and administration the traditional way. So that's where I am coming from. And just to give you a rundown of what this talk is all about, let me share with you the outline. First, I will make a rundown of some theory necessary for us to proceed with practice. And the theory that I'm going to touch on are theories on human development, human language development, and some principles on developmental appropriate language instruction. 35, this is a 35 slide presentation, but as I am already here, I would have probably, this is already the 6th or 7th slide maybe, but a lot of these slides are focused on strategies for young learners, language, and some ways in order for us to also now, and I will try to tie the knot between theory practice to language and literacy development. And I will also share this is a slide, just a slide of resources that can support distance language instruction. So I'm not going to dwell on that slide later. You will see the link in that slide, and because on presentation you can access the slide, and then we will have from there we will wrap up. All right, development. When, well, of course, everybody here, a great majority, if not everybody here,
Ini ngaran. Hello? Hello? Hello?
okay, am I back? Apologies for the
Yes, sir.
interruption. Yeah,
All right, sir.
it's quite cloudy here now. That may be the reason why the connection is buffering. Anyway, I was talking about two major theories that compete, trying to explain human development. You have nature versus nurture. The nature group is genes, genetics that dictate human development. The nurture group relies heavily on social interactions and relationships to explain why humans develop the way that they do. Although because of the opposition between nature versus development, breed of theory that that tries explain interactionist theory, which posits that both now these theories on human development, they apply in just about social development, physical development. You have nature versus nurture theories that explain is on language on language development. Some of the most popular development that explain how humans acquire language in the process. So one of the most popular theories of development is the behaviorist it is, of course, drawn from much of the work of the behaviorists. And language, according to behaviorist theory, is learned through environmental conditions, imitation of adult models. And it's perhaps one of the most straightforward explanation of language development. It explains that language development occurs through the popular names that you've got to remember in relation to the behaviorist theory are, of course, the works of Skinner. Explain how learning is a social process. Now, another theory that explains language development is that of the nativist theory. And the most popular individual that worked on the nativist theory, of course, is Noam Chomsky. And according to the nativist theory, language is native, natural, and innate. Behaviorism theory, nurture theory of language development that is for students or young learners to acquire a language. You've got to explicitly teach them through association, through conditioning, through modeling. But the teach children or young learners the language, because each individual at birth is imbued with this language acquisition device, which will allow the human person, the individual, to acquire language when these theories have their own criticisms. For example, the behaviorist theory is criticized because it cannot account for the fact that young children, learn language faster than they are taught. And for many of us, say that a lot of these young learners, they're like sponge, and they do acquire necessarily explicitly taught. So one criticism for the behaviorist theory is that how come that young learners are able to learn language faster than instruction, which leads us to one of the features. There is critical period, and during this period, young learners can really acquire language at very minimal instruction because of the existence of a language device. But one criticism for the nativist theory is that, well, first, the nativist theory is a human faculty that's as ancient ancestors, and yet no one can pinpoint exactly where or which part of the brain could possibly be the language acquisition device. So these two, they really are polarizing theories. One theory says teach language explicitly, then your young. You don't have to teach young learners because they are imbued with the capacity through the language acquisition device. And because of the polarization of these two, another theory of language development and acquisition was born, which basically combines some of the key features of the behaviorist theory and the nativist theory. And we shall call it, at least for this session, the interactionist theory, which is a combination of the nature versus nurture theories of language. Some young learners are more predisposed to faster and more efficient language, efficient, and yet to be able to provide the stimuli, the environment that will or that will allow the richness of learning, that will provide rich input in order to language learning even more efficient. So interactionism theory combines both the genetic factors and the environmental factors in trying to explain how language is acquired. Now, we now are going to talk about characteristics of effective language and literary. I would say, the characteristics would show nuances depending on your teaching context and depending also on your students' language. Characteristics may be different when the language context is one in a monolingual setting versus, say, in a context where so there can be nuances in the characteristics, but we do understand that coming from a developmental perspective, effective language and literacy instruction includes the following. Number one, it reflects student stages of language acquisition. No effective language and literacy instruction will take place unless your teachers or you yourselves as teachers will not be able to reflect on that your students are currently in. So, stage of language development are they currently in? You need to ask yourselves that and reflect on that in order for you to teach language and literacy. Second characteristic, it helps move through the language acquisition levels. So, an effective language and literacy instruction is one that is facilitative. And I say facilitative, scaffolds students from one level of language development to another, and it allows assisted and individualized instruction in language and literacy in order that our students are able to effectively move up. The third characteristic, and this session, the final one, is that an effective language and literacy instruction engages language learners at all stages of language acquisition in higher level thinking activities. So when or we are in the advanced fluency stage of development, effective instruction happens when we engage our students in higher level thinking activities. So you now imagine that is not here. At least you have, you can imagine the stage of language development to be the horizontal axis, and the vertical axis of thinking that we engage our language learners in. So put this together, it leads us to what I would term as developmentally appropriate language and literacy instruction. Developmentally appropriate, we will only teach language able effectively deal with. And by effectively dealing with, we here talk about having the or foundation knowledge and skills, and at the time activities that will challenge them to really and extend understanding and their skill related to language and literacy. So it's developmentally appropriate because it takes into account the level of language in. So that asking, what are the stages of language development? So for the of language development, I am talking to a basic education audience. So we are talking about the first 5 fluency. I want to call your attention to this the approximate time frame. Di ba ang sabi niya approximate time frame, and you say it's an approximate time frame. It's not, it's not necessarily, it may not necessarily frame. We are trying to approximate, but it could happen or later during this range developmental age. And I want to call your attention to the last 3 levels of or stages of language development, because this will be where our students in the stages of language development, when they come to us in our language classrooms or in our typical classrooms, because I tried of language I tried to water down my reflections and my sharings with you this afternoon in order for them to be applicable, whether or not you're teaching indeed English as a second language, or maybe you're teaching Filipino as a, or teaching a non-language course, but you want to incorporate language and literacy development in your lessons. Your teachers who are teaching the language. So the last 3 stages are probably where are in by the time they reach a basic education classroom. It's possible, for example, that they are all, say, 5-year-olds, or they are all 6-year-olds, and yet within this group of 6-year-olds, advanced fluency stage, have a near native level of speech as proposed in language development, is possible, and reflecting on your experience, you would agree by saying that a lot more may not necessarily be in that stage already. Sometimes our students are even older in terms of development, in terms of chronological, not even in the intermediate fluency stage, and that's highly possible, and have an understanding, really good background reflecting on the stages of development that our students are currently in. And it's possible that in the basic education class, students, experience tells us that our students indeed are heterogeneous. So is it possible, for example, that I deal with students who are in different language stages of language development, and yet they are all it's possible that you factor in the stages of development of your students, and yet you are not really, trying to make plausible, especially in our context now. Say you are using the Three Little Pigs as a material for your 6-year-old for 6-year-old language learners. Stage of development, you will use different prompts, or you will ask different questions in order for students to process the reading material. If your students are in the pre-production, you will simply ask questions that they can answer by, it's pre-production stage, so very minimal comprehension. Your students do not verbalize yet, and they respond by nodding yes or no only, and they draw and point. So you can, your prompt could be, show me the wolf, or where is the house? If you are in early production, if they are in early production, you ask questions that students can answer with 1 or 2 words. How questions already, which students can respond to by providing short sentences. If they are in intermediate fluency, you can, do you think, questions, such as what would happen if the pigs outsmarted the wolf. So the student can excellent comprehension and make few grammatical errors. And if your students are in advanced fluency, you can ask students to retell the story, including main plot elements, but leaving out a classroom example where the application of the stages of language development can be used in order to alter or individualize our instruction. Now, let me talk about some and literacy development. We know that early childhood education, the role that you as teachers and your schools in the basic education level in preparing young language learners for later success in school. Have an opportunity to develop basic foundation in language and literacy in enter kindergarten ready to learn to read and write. And you know that learning to read and write is an important skill that they will need not only subjects, but in all other content subjects. So very important, the development of our students in terms of language and literacy, they role in order for them to succeed in their school or academic goals. But the question remains, how do I know if what I'm doing is right? So in terms of in a way that's developmentally appropriate, am I at least using strategies that are proven and tested to be effective for language development for basic education? I will share with you some strategies on literacy development. For strategy number 1 would have to be providing explicit instruction in vocabulary. And one technique there for language teachers out there is to present vocabulary thematically. This helps our young learners make associations their learning of a second language. Of course, the competing theory for vocabulary acquisition is semantic presentation versus thematic presentation. When you say you teach all vocabulary related to, say, sports or maybe kinship terms. For thematic, you're basically coming from a theme. Say in this example, the theme of a bed leads our young learners to associate other vocabulary items with the main theme of bed, with the theme of pillow, good night, fall asleep, lamp. And research suggests that when we present vocabulary in this way, students are able to more effectively learn new items in their vocabulary more effectively than if we present them semantically. Now, targeted vocabulary can support word learning. For example, so you can ask your young learners to read aloud the examples on the right side, and all of these examples supposedly fall under one theme. We are able to effectively build their vocabulary versus just, say, presenting vocabulary one at a time. I remember when I was in the earlier first grade, that was about 2.5 decades ago. We would be presented vocabulary items one at a time, and we have my teacher would write one vocabulary item in now, and reflecting on my little knowledge on the psychology of language learning, I realized that these are less effective. Presenting vocabulary in isolation are less effective than when we present vocabulary pockets under a single theme. Second strategy is to ensure that our learners have opportunities to talk with both adults and peers and provide ongoing children talking to adults, children talking to language models are really benefited in terms of their you can think about how you design your activities in this way. For example, for group activities, you can pair learners with children who have strong language skills. So you can make sure that all the children who speak the same home language are not. So you can group students according to differences of their. I'll have students paired according to language proficiency. So I'll have one student who has a strong proficiency in the L2, for example, and if that's English, who's not very much so. Or I will pair two students who have language in order for them to benefit from one another. Second, you have to provide opportunities for self-directed activities so that the learners touch both their interests and their language abilities. It's something that we know from experience. The more that our students are able to have a say on the instruction. So sometimes ask your students what their interests are, what their abilities are. Ask them to or engage them in activities that provide opportunities in order for them to demonstrate or share their interests, and in the process demonstrate their language abilities. We can also encourage child. Example, tell Bobby, may I have the red crayon now? So these are effective for even younger learners, as it serves as practice for them in the second language. Use open questions or questions that can have multiple answers to help your learners expand their own utterances. For example, why do you like this doll? Number 3, expose your learners to rich language input. Rich language, whether through shared book reading or through teacher talk, has been shown to enhance children's oral language development. The richer the input is, the better would be the language development of our students. One such effective strategy is for the teacher to provide an ongoing commentary on activities that are taking place in the classroom in order to expose children to language associated with the immediate context. I know what you're thinking now. You're thinking, this cannot be applied because we are our students face to face in the next 5 months. I am exactly addressing first the foundations, and from here we are going to talk about possibilities when we face the digital and the offline delivery comes August. So it's important that whether students in the classroom or all instruction will be remote, and they are going to be given their modules and they are going to accomplish their modules, that our young learners are exposed to rich language input, and that the materials we provide them, the modules we provide them, also are anchored on rich language input. Strategy number 4, we to provide scaffolding for learners' language learning. Madali ito kapag ang pinag-uusapan natin ay language instruction that happens inside. I had to change the strategy from, I had to change the phrase classroom environment space, because at least in the next 5 months, instruction in the learning space is not going to be the traditional four corners of the classroom. So challenge for your teachers and for administrators as well, because now you are, if you are a principal, for example, in the past, you would sure that their classrooms, their language classroom, for example, are designed or structured appropriately learning. But now you're thinking, how do I challenge my team to design the space? And by space, I mean the tradition, the school, their homes, their families. How do we structure such in order that there will be a seamless transition between what's happening in the classroom or in the school, what your teachers are planning in the school, what is going to take place in their respective homes. Now, you've got to challenge your teachers to structure the learning space in a way that supports each that will take place, and then keep changes to the learning environment to a minimum. Ganun pa rin siya. The principle of consistency still takes place. And the principle for young learners, when there is consistency in environment, in the learning exposure, in their learning space and area, the more likely are they to develop routines and acquisition of language. Except that today, in the new normal, what we are going to structure is not only the language classroom, community, the entire school district, for example. If you are an actor of a remote barangay, it's still possible, of a school in a remote barangay, it's still possible. And greater room for innovation in that sense, because if it's just a small community, probably the teachers know everybody in the community know the community. Opportunity for us to really structure the learning space, in this case the community, that will still allow effective language instruction. So here, in the past or tradition, the language classroom. So one part of the classroom, this is what happens. In another part, this is what happens. Your teachers structure it that way, it consistently, and the learners get used to it. They become accustomed to it, so much so that the learning environment or the part of the classroom already prompts to them what they are about to learn in that particular area or in that particular space. But now, in the new normal, you've got to ask yourselves, and you've got to ask your language teachers, what will happen in the school, what will happen in the community, what will happen in their homes. So there will also have to be some degree of consistency when it comes to assigning the types of activities and assessments that will take place in particular areas of the learning space. Predictable classroom routines can also provide scaffolding for language learners by allowing them to anticipate what will happen each day, including the type of language they will need for each activity. Traditionally, that's the case. But now you've in the community, what will happen in school, what will happen when they are with their families? What would be the purpose of activities you will ask them to accomplish in school? What would be the purpose of activities wherein you will ask them to interact with members of the community? And what will be the purpose of the activity that you will ask your students to interact with members of their family? So instruction. And I am showing you an example of a systematic approach to language, to blended instruction. Not necessarily language instruction may be applicable to just about any type of instruction. And I can tell you, in fact, that this is the template that we follow in my university. When just before the pandemic took over, we were already accustomed to transitioning between online mode, face-to-face. Ang nangyayari sa amin noon, so we meet our students 3 times a week, but we did not necessarily meet them face-to-face. So 2 araw in a 3-day schedule, we met our students face-to-face, and a 3rd meeting in a week happens online. What we're saying here is when we structure our instruction, the student should know exactly, no, dapat there's some or my language models at home provide. What types of activities do my teachers usually ask me to do when I interact with community? Where does instruction take place? Does instruction take place in the tradition? Does instruction take place remotely using technology? Or are you going to pass on instruction with or pass it on to the parents or to the adult models of our students? 5, we will have to encourage continued L1 language development. So it will be the case that, if you're teaching English as second language, for example, your students and their families are so proficient in the L1. I forgot the language in Eastern Visayas. I think it's Waray. Is it Waray in the Eastern Visayas and other languages? It's possible that our students and their adult models are very necessarily their L2. Their L2 is Tagalog, and they're learning English as an L3 or a 3rd language. Let's encourage parents and read to their children in their home language. As a book of search also suggests that strong foundation in the first language leads to effective acquisition of second language, and so on. So if students are able to develop very strong language skills, say what language skills related to, say, speaking, well, to benefit from this strong L1 language skills by learning a second language more easily than when the first language not really there really that strong proficiency yet in the first some of our practices before. I remember when I was in elementary in a public school, and um, uh, I'm a proud part of the school system of the country as well. I'm a product of the public schools from preschool, elementary to high school. I'm a graduate of public. I remember that back in the pub, I had teach uh the first language Kapampangan, because Kapampangan, or we're not even allowed to. We have those big posters or signs that say speak English, or this school is an English speaking school, or students in this school want gain proficiency in their local language, in their mother tongue. Let me call it mother tongue. Their Eastern Visayas, Tagalog, to mother tongue or Tagalog, and just tell them to speak English, because what they're going to do is they will not speak anyway, do not have any proficiency. So even instruction for me, I come from the point of view that even instruction can incorporate switching things in order for teachers to actively express, at least are concepts that that are very difficult to explain in the language English. Do not in the English speaking world, but they are concepts that are very common in our context. You can also incorporate children language in the classroom when possible. Songs and videos can be for this purpose. If teachers do not speak their students' language. So for me, it's the language. Now, let's talk about literacy development as well. Literacy is language development. It's possible that our students have pertains to their ability to identify, understand, interpret, and commute using it associated with content. So things that we need to remember, our students with our consume, process, and analyze material. Not only spoken material, not only written material, even visual materials, even videographic material. It can be used in order to connect content awareness, our early literacy skills that will later on contribute to your students achieve. So how teach students scaffold first the important skills such as knowledge of the alphabet and the phonology of learners can begin to develop these essential foundational skills in preschool, even before they have developed strong English language skills, for example. Now, for literacy development, the first strategy I share with you is reading. You have a host of different activities that you can possibly use in order for us to design up knowledge of alphabet, phonological awareness. Number 2 is recognizing that many literacy skills can transfer across languages. Anong ibig sabihin nun? A child developing who has early literacy skills, proficient in English, for example, should be encouraged to help prepare their children for learning to read by using the home language and play games. In their case, your teachers can support parent-child reading by sending home books in the child's home language, which is what's available to important. So especially now in our context, there will have to be a lot of you working on, or your teachers working with your students' parents, and a lot, yes, a lot of the language that traditionally play in forms of conversation, you members of the community and your children's families. And you can also accelerate literacy development by helping learners make the connection between what they know in their L1 and what they need to know in the L2. Lalong-lalo sa atin, di ba, sa konteksto natin, ang daming, this is most clearly demonstrated. Hello, do you hear me? Hello, am I back?
Yes, sir.
Was I cut off? Matagal akong nawala.
Hindi po, mga just around 10 to 20 seconds.
Example, we teach our the vowel sounds a, e, I, o, u, and yet later on they will realize that English has many more, even more vowel sounds. So when I was young, I was taught, when I was young, we were taught the vowel sounds in Tagalog, a, e, I, o, u. And to exemplify the vowel sound a, my teacher used the example apple. So I did pronounce apple correctly, and I am able to pronounce the vowel sound a effectively. And yet later on, when we were learning English, we realized that the a in apple is in fact a schwa sound. We do not introduce the characteristics of our Philippine languages that may be similar. The schwa may be a common minimized vowel sound in English, but and it's not present, but it's not uncommon in other Philippine languages. For example, I once spoke Pangasinan, and even Ilocano, they have the minimized vowel sound. They also have a schwa. That's where some of the characteristics, phonological characteristics of your local language can be used to accelerate literacy development in a second language. And you can teach students some of the similarities of L1 and L2. And in our classroom, I realized it will be inevitable that we continue even more our conversations. And at this time and age, and in this current crisis that we are in, it's very important that we are able to continue our conversations. And these conversations, they prove to be effective even when the pandemic hasn't even taken over, but they are group of people who share a something they do and learn how to do it better as they interact regularly. So what is the community of practice about here? It's a community of practice of language and literacy development for young learners in the community who cannot come to school and who nonetheless still need to learn the language and need to develop literacy and of practice, of course, that focuses on a particular domain. The domain is language. You share that key issue, your co-teacher, not only with staff in school, but also with members of the community. A while back, the more tightly knit so you can really with the members of the community what you think is their role in this of COVID-19 when it comes to our young learners trying to learn. Community includes built through discussion, activities, and learning. And the practices, of course, body of knowledge, methods, stories, and tools developed. So hindi lang siya pinag-uusapan natin na kailangan matuto ang mga bata and kapag nagkaroon sila ng oportunidad na makausap kayo o kapag nagkaroon sila ng oportunidad na makapag-interact sa inyo, kailangan ganito ang kailangan coming from this talk are talking about is, say, developmentally language instruction. So really sit down just before August opening of classes begins, and you've got to really involve every stakeholder in the community in order to ensure that even if students are not in the classroom, they will be able in this time and age. What would be the role of adults who are not necessarily part of their siblings and of their neighbors in a particular street, for example. And more so now, I think that teachers will have to really communicate more often and effectively with these people who, because it's the teachers who would interact with students most often role. Now, language instruction at distance requires innovative thinking. Now, you've got to really challenge your teachers to really think outside the box, if I may use the cliche phrase, but everybody has got to be innovative. How do we get in the farthest of areas? And you see, I come from a university that transitions so smoothly, relatively very smoothly compared with, because I can understand how difficult it is to be dealing with, of a lot of our students do not even have, and their families, they do not even have a mobile phone. They do not, let's not even talk about internet connection, because they do not even have a gadget, any gadget, the simplest of gadget, even a phone that's not a smartphone, an analog has to be carried out and offline, things can still work, and that really requires innovative thinking. The first question that needs to, how do you get dali ito kapag napakaliit lang ng community natin, because si teacher mismo pwede niyang dalhin, ihahatid talaga yan ni teacher, because you know the passion of your teachers when it comes to making sure that students learn. They can do that. But how about every students' homes on time? So again, community of practice comes in. We can, for example, to members of the community who do pickups and delivery in certain parts of the community, or in far hatid nila yung mga modules o yung mga materials. So that requires sitting down, part of the equation, in order for us to really teach our students. You've got to play a role in this. So do you ensure that the modules get yours? Modular approach can work, but so much. I mean, the teacher cannot his or her 7 days a week just delivering materials. Will be taught and then delivered. So this requires efficiency when it comes to how the community works and how the community moves. Second, how do you communicate assignments to families? So here, phone calls and self-addressed stamped envelopes. Phone calls, kapag merong cellphone, self-addressed stamped envelopes, kahit handwritten letters, can be helpful in this. It comes to when it comes to the accomplishing of the modules or the learning modules. Put a one-pager at the beginning of each assignment with directions. Tinuturuan na second language, going back home, that at ikaw, you are the best language model already. Back home, at least a good language model. So think, no, baka yung mismong instruction mo written in English, hindi maintindihan niya nung parents nung bata. So you've got to really make your lingual. And if you will need to go down as far as providing visuals for the directions, how will they accomplish? Do they draw? Do they encircle? Do exactly provide visuals for them in order that could effectively assist accomplishing the module activities and assessments to give. You can take advantage of the autonomy the students' assignments and projects for which is happening during these times. Lalo because for all we know, able to accomplish their subject they have really been affected badly by the lockdown and by the quarantine and by the drastic change in routine. So what we can do is, you can make use of their to make use of authentic material. You can ask them to create projects, and you can create projects and assignments. So here you ask students write down or talk about what's going on in their own family. In this way, again, you are your students an opportunity to really uh, make use far from them. I mean, come on, you can make use of your usual reading materials, those which you used in the past years in the traditional classroom. But the question remains, will that be relatable? Versus, for example, asking them to reflect incorporate social emotional learning in language instruction and so lahat na yung mga logistical decisions that will have to be made, no, yung assurance that it's okay if they cannot progress fast as you want them to. I mean, it's an extraordinary time. While we are working on making sure practice is innovative, we have to consider that different students have had to contend social emotional health during. That's why I also sure that you send out the message. What's the message we have to send out to our students this time? Number one, they have, as they learn a language and as they develop literacy, they have to make sure that you send the message important. What we are learning is important. Do not have your classmates beside you. There is no, you are being assessed, you are being examined, you are being quizzed, but not we have done so before, but that learning today less important than what to face. Third, students the message that you will not give up on them, no matter how slow or how fast their progress would. Fourth, you have to send the message they can do it. No matter how far you are, or your teachers are, no matter how for as long as you still can communicate, every chance you give should be able to send this message. And these are messages that we can our instruction. For example, here are used to incorporate the message important in our language and literacy instruction. To reach out to the families regularly. Encourage them to use community or remind. Or if you are dealing with more advanced learners, say grade 10, 11, or 12, have the capacity for technology groups in social media. You can text, call. We do not have the technology in order to and if it's available in your community, share with them your psycho-emotional support services. And during your sit-down meeting with the community, go for book drive and distribution that families have in excess. Collect them and you can distribute them because, many more of, resources when we were in the traditional mode, but they are even, this has become even more challenging now. We can possibly go for donation drives in order for us to provide resources to our students. Difficult to learning. And then, of course, try to students through their friends or family. Include them in class meetings via phone when you are able, and when they are able to make phone calls, call them and talk to them as well in order for them to realize, okay, that you have not devolved your that you are there and that they're their stories the previous week are important. The following efforts help send a message that's important. How about teaching ideas learn when we are a message that what our is important? Number one, be work is important. Ganun pa rin, no? Just like in the past, we tell our students, whether it's in written form, in the instruction, they're going to learn in this module. We can get training in the basics of balanced literacy to be able to use reading and writing support in virtual lessons, if that's possible. Get training for teachers. Get training in the basics of second language acquisition as well. I mean, I provided the basics. You need to learn even more when it comes to the theories and principles of language acquisition. Let's see, we can make use as jump off point when we are teaching them language and literacy. And I remember my professor, Paulo Nino Valdez, has a research published in the Journal of Asia, or how to integrate linguistic landscape in the absence of technology. We can send home different letters and encourage students to list, label, and copy text with illustrations, creating models, or using the target language. So needless to say, make our students busy, feel that they're busy, but not so much that madadrown na sila dun sa mga sobrang dami na activity na binibigay natin. And this will binigay mo without any explanation, kapag binigay mo without really explaining how is it related to the previous module and how will it be related to the succeeding module, feel or realize that and they do not think it's important, you're not really going to exert effort in learning or accomplishing your modules. What ideas can we use in order to send them? Not give up on them. We will have to check in regularly and continue to offer ideas for reading and writing. For your advanced students, for example, you can provide materials for further reading and writing. Or if your students are having any difficulty when it comes to reading and writing, you might need to provide them with extra work. So you will have to check in regularly, find out what's happening to your students. If it's possible, pupunta ka dyan, no? Face-to-face, you meet them. You also devise a way in order for you to first your students. And as part of your teaching and learning activity and assessment tasks, maybe they will need to write back or draw something as a response if they cannot write yet, no, or do anything, and that will be the response to you. That will really help them. That will really assist them in their literacy development. And again, you will have to organize other possible activities, innovative activities that will hinge on the role of community members in the language and literacy instruction. Remember that many virtual meeting platforms allow call-in from a landline or cell phone. Include them as much as possible. The tech on your end can help you communicate as a teacher. Remind or show students that YouTube videos, if possible, can be slowed down, closed. Other ideas give the message that you on them. And finally, how can we send them? Show students their progress often. So, you tell them that they are doing well on this aspect. This is where they need to exert even more effort. This with their progress. Of inspiration with all students. No, if now more than ever, our stories they are resonated because of this extraordinary experience we share in this time and age, and would resonate to your students. And if they, for example, hear a story that, you know, the difficulties that they are facing when it comes to learning are the same difficulties that other students faced and yet overcome or and yet succeeded. Na mga blog mismo, you print them, no? I hope that as administrators, is for your teachers to not spend their money, and you know, since wala naman some other we traditionally used for materials could probably be channeled towards, you know, printing expenses, purchase of printed materials, and that stuff. Make sure they understand the growth mindset. We get smarter, we improve. Ang dami sa mga students na yan, worried sila sa kanilang learning, no? And because it's language and literacy development, it's even more important to them because, and it's even more critical for them because they do not know exactly whether they are learning in the they do not have their classmates or they do not have a sitmate with them. So unlike in the traditional classroom, they can immediately ask, they can get immediate feedback, but now they do not. Important that as teachers, you know, or as administrators, we encourage our teachers, their students, in order to understand that no matter what happens, no, there will be a way for them to succeed, no. So kung hindi nila matatapos yung module, no, what leeway, what opportunity would we provide them? And continued effort and to gains that help reinforce a student's perception of their own. More than ever, it's important that students feel they have the ability to learn on their own, that they are self-regulated as learners, that they feel any difficulty trying to learn a language or trying to literacy task, they have their they have the community to assist them. Their teachers are one call away or one postcard away. In that way, they're able to realize and feel, yes, they can do it. Materials that you can access for your distance learning needs comes August. Some of the distance learning solutions will not even require internet connectivity. So please do access this talk, and I will share with you the link now. In it now, is this the link? It is. Please do download the materials. I mean the website, and check out the materials. And let me end by saying, language learners and students living just the world shifts to distant learning. Imagine it hasn't happened yet. A lot of our students in public schools are already having a lot of difficulties trying to learn a language or trying to be in our schools and in our classrooms. What more now that their difficulties, their socio-economic difficulties in the provinces is coupled with the difficulties brought about by the health crisis that goes on. So we need to understand that the challenges that our students face are unique, but at the same time, we also need to understand that just because a student has access to home internet and a laptop does not make their situations equitable in all aspects of learning. We've at the end of the day, there's you, the teacher, there's you, the administrator, who will have to conditions for successful language and literacy instruction. For without a well thought of plan, without a community working together in order for our students to get the materials they need, in order for our students to get the feedback they need from different individuals, we will fail instruction. And with that, we shall, I don't know if we will have a Q&A, but any questions regarding the slides? I understand I have taken up but if you have any questions or request for slides, if you will not get them, or you need the PowerPoint version, or if you need to tag Facebook, that's my name in Facebook, and this is my digital call card. You can, that I turn you over again to Sir Joy or Sir Dean.
Sir Joy, I'll go online. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Again, we'd like to extend our deepest appreciation, Sir Edward, for sharing with us your expertise on the subject matter. The session has shown us how we can bridge theory into practice and ideas into actions. I am confident that with these inputs, our education leaders and teachers in the field will find this very useful in their instructional setting. Thank you for answering the call and for sharing your time with us, sir. We truly appreciate this provision of technical assistance as we continue to serve our country, our teachers, and our learners. With this, we give you, sir, our salute and gratitude. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Edward J. Okay, thank you, sir, so much. And
thank you.
Since we already running out of time, we would just like to announce to our participants that should they have questions, they can just send in their questions to be forwarded to Sir Jay, Sir Edward, and we'll do our best to relay this to our speaker, and so that these queries will be answered in due time. Thank you very much. Okay, Sir Edward, thank you so much. Maraming salamat po, sir. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Probably we could just take a picture for this batch. Okay, just one photo op, and then we'll proceed to the next speaker. All right. May I request our participants? You can now turn on your video for our group picture. All right, there you have it. Even just for the first page, or the rest of you can also take yours using your print screen or any device that will capture the images in your screen. Hey, cheese! Okay, with our speaker, Sir Edward. Okay. Thank you so much. We've got at least around 1,000 of our school heads from the 13 divisions of the region. Okay, there you have it. And once again, let's give our salute to Dr. Edward J. Quinto from the Mapua University. Sir, thank you so much. All right. So moving on, coming up for our next session is another highly qualified resource speaker who shall share his thoughts, this time on numeracy and distance learning. Our next speaker is special in his own right. Why? We are lucky to enlist the support of someone who has a world-class expertise, which is matched by a keen local lens, considering that he is a homegrown talent who is willing to return his service to the community. Our resource person is a research methodologist and licensed professional teacher with 14 years of teaching experience in a state university teaching mathematics, assessment, evaluation, research, and statistics in the field of education, social sciences, and theology. He earned his PhD in education research and evaluation from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, as an honor graduate, elected as member to the Honor Society of Phi Kappa Phi for Superior Scholarship, and to the Pi Gamma Mu, an honor society for social scientists. He earned his master's degree in mathematics from the University of San Carlos. Dr. Villas specializes in quantitative, qualitative, and mixed method data analytics with 10 years of field research experience in the likes of baseline studies, community development and impact studies, educational research, child protection, social structures, and dynamics of school leadership, voters' motivation and political planning, and data modeling using item response and classical test theories. Dr. Villas is also a content editor for mathematics and practical research of the SIBS publication and have published teaching guides for practical research 1 and 2 under the same publishing house. Along with his other referee journal publications, he is also a national speaker for the Philippine Association of Researchers and Statistical Software Users and a firm center for research and professional learning. Our speaker is a native of Palompon, Leyte, and is currently the program chair of PhD in social science research at the Leyte Normal University. Dear friends, please join me in welcoming our next speaker for numeracy in distance learning, Dr. Jonas P. Villas. Good afternoon, sir.
Thank you, Dean, for such, I would say, quite lengthy. Maybe at this time, we need to be succinct with our discussion. Our time right now is already almost 4 o'clock. So I will be sharing to you a presentation on numeracy in distance learning. May I see a thumbs up for if you can see my slides already? Is it flashed already?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So my respect to the regional director of the Department of Education, R.D. Ramil Oitico, and the rest of the regional workforce who made this virtual learning and development sessions possible. Now, this video presentation, or this webinar rather, is actually recorded so that our viewers, particularly who are in YouTube, and those who may encounter a difficulty due to bandwidth and bad weather, they can access it asynchronously. Also, this morning, I forwarded already my PowerPoint presentation in PDF for the reference of those who might be needing them as they go on into the implementation of remote teaching and learning. So newsflash muna tayo bago tayo magsimula. Newsflash. 30 minutes ago, President Rodrigo Roa Duterte approved limited face-to-face classes in MGCQ areas. So that's quite a good news to all of us because we are really experiencing several problems if we are going to go on an online mode of delivery for instruction. So that's quite a good news. So I think this is an offshoot of what the Secretary of the Department of Education is asking the President to affirm their recommendation for a limited face-to-face. So now I'm factoring that in the considerations into the aspect of how we are going to strategize teaching numeracy for our students. Yes. O, di ba narinig nyo, medyo excited sila, no? Nasa news flash po kanina, tinignan ko sa Facebook ko, live on DZMM Teleradio, may news flash doon na approve na ang limited face-to-face para doon sa modified general community quarantine area. So that's really a good news to all of us because Region 8 in general is of course under MGCQ. So magandang balita po yun sa ating lahat. Parang isang malaking tinik po siya, no? Na natanggal sa atin as we try to deliver our choice of modality of learning. So moving ahead, where do we go from here? Okay. Now my discussion will not also be prescriptive in nature. Now, I will not say this is what you're going to do, but this is a matter of a strong suggestion. Why? Because if we listen to Dean's discussion a while ago or introduction, I have the tacit knowledge because I am from the region as well. So I know our difficulties when it comes to internet connectivity, okay? And because of this, my propositions, I hope they will be taken strongly in consideration of the delivery of instruction. So first, pag-usapan natin ng konteksto, no? Pagkatapos, we're going to revisit just a little on how our minds or how our children's minds works in the first place. This is necessary so that we will be able to position our approach to how the learners are actually wired, no? Brain-wise. And of course, considerations, what are the existing resources and initiatives for us, and feedback as well as refinement mechanism. All right. So I would like to present an allegory of two bridges. All right. Now, the picture that you are seeing on the screen right now at the bottom right is actually a picture of a wooden bridge. And at the topmost right, you can see a picture of, well, it's a skyway, but it resembles a bridge. It is concrete for that matter. Now, this is an allegory for me because I would like to compare this on our choice of remote teaching and learning. The wooden bridge is the modular instruction. Okay? Ito po ay pinagtibay ng panahon. Bakit ko nasabing pinagtibay ng panahon? There is a Republic Act that creates distance education in this country, and we are guided by that. And the University of the Philippines Open University is one of the leading universities who is implementing this act. And in the 90s, the modality that they've used is actually modular instruction. So many of our leaders in the region are products of modular instruction, and they managed to survive. They managed to prosper. So it is actually a proven modality that it will work. Okay. Now you have here a so-called concrete bridge. I would like to compare it to online learning. Why will I compare it to online learning? Alam nyo kasi, para doon na sa mga nagawi sa Metro Manila, when you access a sky bridge or when you access an expressway, no? Maganda yung takbo, matulin yung takbo, pero may bayad yon. No? There is a toll fee for that. Unlike in the wooden bridge, wala pang bayad ito. No? When you access a structure, a bridge made of a structure, in the case of our superhighways in Metro Manila, bawal kang maglakad doon. In other words, mabilisan ito. Okay? So it's a fast-paced situation. All right? So, pero, mabilis ka namang darating sa patutunguhan mo for that matter. So it is actually a choice for us to weigh. Now, the million-dollar question is, may kapasidad ba tayo na pumunta doon sa full online learning o kaya sa blended learning. Kasi marami din talaga ang advantage when you go into blended learning. Now, balikan natin ang konteksto ng ating rehiyon. Our region has one of the poorest provinces in the country. So having said that, you think they have internet connectivity? It is also a fact that although many households have FB or Facebook at home, what remains a challenge is the fiscal demands of mobile data. In our math majors alone in the university, it is also a problem, no? If you're going to go online learning. Kasi paano yung walang pambili ng data sa internet? Saan sila kukuha nun? Mahirap na nga po yung kalagayan nila, no, sa pang-araw-araw. Dadagdag pa tayo. So this is now an issue of prioritization. That is why it is a sad note, but the declining enrollment is indicative of one choice, that they would rather stay at home for this pandemic for safety reasons, or because of some circumstances, no, that is related to the choice of modality of learning. So, a strategic direction which is enshrined in the functions of the regional director, as per Department Order Number 12, Series of 2020, to decide on the modality to adapt a mode of teaching with due consultation and considerations is actually necessary. And I'm very happy that Region 8 have crossed the wooden bridge. Okay? They've crossed the wooden bridge. They were clear into their direction. Magma-modular tayo kasi ito yung ating konteksto. Hindi natin maaabot yung mga batang walang internet. No? That's my salute to the regional office for crossing the bridge immediately and for scaffolding mechanisms and how we can support our teachers and our executives in the region. Also, bago magsimula ang lecture na ito o ang presentasyon ito, I interviewed someone from DepEd Region 8 kasi gusto kong makuha yung konteksto. No? At doon ko nalaman nga that they will primarily use modular print as a teaching and learning modality. And if I am not mistaken, there is only one division who might be opting for a radio broadcast. Okay? But in general, it's going to be a modular print. Okay. So, as a personal note, maganda po that we are going to go into modular print. Kami po sa mathematics unit, ako mismo sa mathematics unit in Leyte Normal University, I am for modular print, although we have another online platform, but at the minimum, modular print po ang aming gagawin, okay, for mathematics. Why? Because we don't want that our students in the disadvantaged sector will be left behind. And that we don't want that this education in the shadow pandemic will cause disparity between students who can afford and those who cannot. We don't want that to happen. We want to reach out as many students as possible as of this moment. So I'm happy with the decision and thank you so much for moving forward for that matter. Now, the participants of this training too is something that I factored in for the decision as to what would be the components of my discussion. Una sa lahat, hindi po tayo mga beginning teachers. In other words, alam natin, may kakayahan tayo na magturo ng numeracy sa ating mga bata. Bakit? Naituro na natin ito ng makailang ulit. No? Naituro na natin ito ng several decades, several years for that matter. And also, there are supervisors, superintendents who are joining us also in this particular forum. So they have the capacity to cascade and mechanize a plan of action to deliver teaching and learning numeracy using modular print. My respect also for the division superintendent of Tacloban City Division, Dr. Tinasas, if he's around, considering that Leyte Normal University is also offering basic education. And our ILS, of course, is within the jurisdiction of the DepEd at Tacloban City Division. Okay. So quick survey tayo kasi ang oras natin ay medyo 4:00 na. No? Let's do a quick survey to look at definitions of numeracy, stages of K-12 education that focuses on numeracy, and what is our conceptualization of the learner. So, para doon sa mga aktibo dyan at medyo malalakas yung kanilang internet connection, let us go to menti.com. No? Go to menti.com and use the code 255694. All right, pasok po tayo doon. May tanong po doon, which of the following best describes numeracy? All right, tingnan natin kung may sumagot po. There are 2 questions that were actually placed or included in that discussion. So which of the following best describes numeracy? And then there is another question, which is, which stage in the K-12 education focuses on numeracy? So, paano po gagawin? I-type po ang menti.com. Ayun, may sumagot na. And use the code 255694. May isang sumagot, comprehending fundamental operations like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Dalawa na. Okay, dalawa na po ang sumagot. Tingnan natin dun sa isa. Wala pang sumagot dun sa isa. Which stage in the K-12 education focuses on numeracy? Para medyo mabuhay po ang ating kalamnan. No? It's quite a heavy lecture for the entire starting 9 o'clock kaninang umaga hanggang ngayong hapon. May isang sumagot, ability to reason and apply simple numerical concepts. Okay? Ayun. Which stage in K-12 education focuses on numeracy? Karamihan, K-3. Maganda po yan. Ayan. All right. Ayan, parami ng parami ang ating mga sumasagot. 19 na po ang sumasagot. We have 623 participants. So nasaan ang 623 participants ngayon? Okay? So again, this is actually one thing that we cannot do in modular instruction. No? But the whole point here is, of course, we are delivering this series of discussion online. So we have to tap mechanism on how also to do it online. So we have 39 already. Okay? Sige. So, I will continue immediately, no? So that in the interest of time. Ang pinakamaraming sumagot on which of the following best describes numeracy ay 40. Doon po sa pang-apat na option. Pasensya na po if I'm looking at the right side because there's an extended screen on my right wherein it serves as my monitor. No? So, ano po ba ang best? No? Wala po kasing maling sagot dito. No? Best po na description of numeracy. So, alin dito ang pinaka-best? Yun pong addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, hindi po ba numerical concepts yon? Tama ho ba? Yun pong addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division are specific numerical concepts. And numeracy is beyond addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Hindi lang po siya nakakahon doon. Kaya po ang akmang definition that would best describe what numeracy is the ability to reason and apply simple numerical concepts. Yay! Para doon sa mga 28 na nakakuha ng best answer for the description of numeracy. So bakit po best siya? Ayun, biglang dumami ulit. Bakit po best siya? Kasi po, mas general yung kaniyang konsepto, no? Numerical concepts. So pasok po doon si addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Hindi lang din limited doon. So marami pa po. Now let's go to the next question. Which stage in the K-12 education focuses on numeracy? Of course, this is expected. It's actually in K-3. Now, the whole point of me sharing why it is or asking the question, what stage in the K-12 education focuses on numeracy, is because I would like to look at what are the characteristics of the students, no, na may edad na pasok doon sa K-3. So allow me to continue with my presentation. Okay. Now, numeracy. Ginawa ko, nilagay ko lahat dyan ng posibleng ideas, no? On the aspect of numeracy. Okay. Now, una, this is about K-3 education. No? This is about K-3 education. Yun po ang nagfo-focus doon sa numeracy. Okay, I think I have to do something for a while. I'll pause my sharing first. No? Because okay. All right, so can you still see my slides now? Sir Dean, are you still with us?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Now, ito po ay maraming konsepto na nilagay dito. Napakaraming konsepto na nilagay dito. Anong mga konsepto ang nandito? Una, yung primary modality natin ay modular. Pangalawa, naiintindihan natin, no, bilang mga guro na ang pagtuturo ng math, no, or in teaching math, we can access almost all of the materials na pwede nating mahanap sa bahay, pwede nating mahanap sa environment. Pangatlo, yung pagtuturo din ng numeracy in how our curriculum was actually developed was anchored on the 5 E's. And what are the 5 E's? Ito po yung engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. So dito naka-angkla, no, ang ating pamamaraan sa pagturo ng numeracy. Alam natin ito. Bakit? Kasi ito yung ginagawa natin. No? Walang nabago dyan. No? Yan yung ginagawa natin. Okay. So I will skip the third question in the interest of time and go ahead into the definition or characteristics of our K-3 learners. So evolutionary developmental psychology, kung narinig nyo kanina si Dr. Quinto, suggests that language is a primary ability of a child. Natutunan niya ito without actually getting a formal education of it. No? Natutunan niya ito sa bahay. In fact, masayang-masaya ang magulang pag yung first word na na-utter ng bata ay narinig nila. No? Kasi natutunan ito dahil nga ito ay biologically primary abilities ng bata. Kasama po dito ang facial expression, non-verbal behavior, theory of mind, and so on. Now, nasaan si math? Nasaan si math dito? Si math po ay biologically secondary abilities. No? At because secondary abilities ito, yung bata natin ay hindi siya intrinsically motivated to do it. At dahil hindi siya intrinsically motivated to do it, nangangailangan po ito ng consistent supervision, nangangailangan po ito ng masusing gabay at patnubay ng magulang. No, hindi po SPG. Masusing gabay ng mga guro and of course the parents at home as well. So in essence po, the evolutionary psychology is suggestive of teaching approach through encouragement and practice. At ito pong encouragement and practice, dito din po pumapasok yung sinasabi kanina ni Dr. Quinto na nature-nurture. Okay? How genes, no, are actually could be altered. No? How gene expression could be altered as the students or as our children interact with the environment. Okay? All right. Now, titingnan pa natin ng maigi pa rin. Nasaan si K-3? Si K-3 ay pumapasok dito sa dalawang gitnang stage na ito. Pre-operational at concrete operational. So bakit po ito binalik na naman? No? Binalik ko po ito kasi kailangan nating hawakan. No? Hawakan yung katotohanan that the only way for us to teach numeracy, no, in K to 3 is, of course, to make use of concrete examples. And that is one thing that is challenging in modular instruction. No? Teaching numeracy or teaching and learning K to 3 numeracy must begin by tapping the primary biological abilities such as language. That is the reason bakit po nagma-mother tongue tayo. Okay? Supplanted with images through concrete examples with a degree of encouragement, sufficient practice or drills, and feedback mechanism. Now, wariin niyo po, isa po sa problematic dito sa modular instruction and with a limited face-to-face is the feedback mechanism. Paano gagawin ang feedback mechanism? Yan po ay isa sa napakahalagang tanong na dapat pag-usapan natin ngayong hapon na ito. Now let's focus on the modules. This synthesis is based on my interview with the DepEd personnel who facilitated the invitation for this lecture. Now, modules are designed to promote independent learning. It is flexible, and it is at the middle of learning flexibility continuum. Bakit po siya nasa middle ng learning flexibility continuum? Mag-move forward ako ng konti, tapos babalik ako dun sa iba. Ito po yung modular instruction in the flexibility and technology continuum. So kung titingnan niyo po, yung modular instruction ay uri po ng distance education. Hindi po siya blended, no? Kasi hindi mo siya hahaluan ng online learning, okay? Pag may halo siya na face-to-face, aatras po yan dito, maging blended po yan. Yung modular instruction is defined to be one of the most flexible learning modality that we can use. So this is an excerpt from Chancellor Bandaleria's presentation. So, nandito po ang modular instruction. Okay? So, as I've mentioned, it is at the middle of the learning flexibility continuum. Now, sino ang gumawa ng modules? Bakit ko po ito tinatanong? Hindi po ako magvo-volunteer gumawa ng module kasi napakahirap at challenging din pong gumawa ng module lalo na't marami ang subjects na tinuturo din namin, no, sa LNU. Now, yung modules po, ayon po sa nasagap kong impormasyon, is constructed by different regions. So for example, grade 1 is constructed by a certain region. While for region 8, if I am not mistaken, we are assigned to construct for or to prepare for modules in grade 5. Now, bakit ito gusto kong ma-focus sa discussion? Alam niyo po kasi, sa paggawa po ng module, kailangan makita ng gumawa ang umpisa hanggang sa katapusan. Kailangan makita ng gumawa anong mga materials ang available doon mismo sa komunidad, doon mismo sa bahay ng bata. You cannot say use a puncher kasi posibleng walang puncher yung bahay o yung isang household. No? So again, importante ito. Kasi kailangan nating balikan yung konteksto ng ating rehiyon. Is it within the context of our region? So mamaya isa-strategize natin yan. Now, as mentioned kanina, modular print is a primary modality for DepEd Region 8. This is lifted from the presentation of RD. And modules are MELC-based, quality assured, and produced in print and digital forms. Okay, maganda yon. Digital forms so that teachers can access it immediately. Okay, now, my criticism for this aspect is that when we look at the modules kasi, mayroon tayong tinatawag na response validity or response process validity. Kung saan itong response process validity ay mabubuo lang ito kung ang isang module ay na-implementa na ng kabuuhan. So hindi mo yan makikita. So at this stage of modular development, no, it is expected that the modules that we will be receiving are not perfect. If If so, it may be close to perfect, but basically, hindi po siya perfecto. Kailangan ang pagtugon ng mga guro para ma-supplement kung ano yung meron doon sa modules. Okay, even though it is subjected to a level of quality assurance. Contextualization remains to be important for this matter. Okay? Now, isang katotohanan din po na dahil ang ating mga taga-subaybay, no, sa modules na gagawin natin sa numeracy ay K-3, isang katotohanan po na ang modules ay naipakita na nagre-result ng kagandahan when the users are actually mature enough. No? So modules work better as one progresses in age. Having said that, it poses now a very critical question. And what is that critical question? How can we make modules work in teaching numeracy for K-3? Okay? It's been 30 seconds that I've been talking, and I tell you, I'm already half of my slides. So don't worry. So, how can we make modules work in teaching numeracy for K-3? Dito po papasok ang ating mga strategies na gagawin. The strategies is not about teaching, but it's about how we manage teaching and learning. Bakit hindi ko po papag-usapan ang strategies in teaching numeracy? Alam nyo na po yan. No? Nagturo na po kayo ng numeracy ng napakatagal na panahon. You already know that. No? In fact, baka mas alam niyo pa yan kaysa sa akin. Kasi sa amin, sa higher education institution, we teach theories. Kayo po, nasa inyo ang practice. So mas marami kayong takeaways dyan. No? So the strategies that I'm presenting has something to do with how we can make modules work for teaching numeracy in K-3 on the level of teaching and learning management. Modules. Una, let us not reinvent the wheel. Shout out po pala to Ate Gina, no, from Catbalogan, no, and several of our friends from Catbalogan City. Bigla po na mag-message. Sana wala na mag-message yung pa shout out. Joke. Okay. All right. Now, let us not reinvent the wheel. Bakit? Kasi nandiyan na yung modules eh. Bakit pa tayo magkukuha ng online resources at ipipilit natin o igagapang natin na ma-access ng mga bata? Okay? Now, so let's focus on the modules. Now, pero para ma-strategize natin ito ng maayos, kung pwede lang po para doon sa ating mga executives sa DepEd, no, lalo na sa regional office, hingi po tayo ng advanced copy ng module. Kahit hindi pa po final at proof copy, para matingnan na po at mapag-usapan ng mga guro. Okay? Now, sa LNU, imagine niyo half-half po kami. Ano ibig sabihin ng half-half? Hindi namin kaya, ako mismo, hindi ko kayang gumawa ng module on Advanced Statistics 2 for the entire semester, along with other 3 modules on other 3 courses. Mamamatay po ako doon. No? So, half-half kami. Unang ilalabas, midterm competencies. Habang gumugulong yung para sa midterm competencies, igagapang at gagawin din yung para sa finals at ihahabol na malabas kaagad. So, in other words, kung pwede, hingi tayo ng advanced copy so that we can look at the material. Now, how or what lens are we going to use in looking into the material? One is contextualization. Do a contextual review of the modules. Isa-isahin natin ito mamaya. 2, parents, teachers, and community collaboration. Evaluate the module as to what extent parents, teachers, and community can collaborate. 3, feedback. Examine the module. What feedback mechanism is feasible with limited face-to-face? 4th, the issue of minimal face-to-face, which was just brought up about 30 minutes ago, about 45 minutes ago na, or 1 hour na, no? Kasi nag-30 minutes na ako eh, na magkakaroon na tayo ng limited face-to-face for areas under MEGCQ. Okay, now, agenda sa contextual review. Are the learning targets SMART? Anong ibig sabihin ng are the learning targets smart? May focus pa ako dyan mamaya, no? And the focus is resource-orientedness. Okay? Yun yung focus natin. 2, to what extent should a facilitator mediate in the delivery of learning? So ito po yung konteksto ng contextual review. Ito po yung focus natin. These are some of these were mentioned already a while ago. Okay? So let's proceed. Did I jump? Okay. Wala pala. All right. Now, from this agenda, i-operationalize natin siya. Tingnan natin kung anong aspeto nangangailangan ng parents training. Bakit po nangangailangan ng parents training? Kasi what if nasa bahay lang si estudyante? Hindi po yan actually what if, fact po yan. Nasa bahay lang si estudyante. At what if si parents din ay nangangailangan din ng turo? Okay? This idea of parents training was also expressed by the Secretary of the Department of Education as well in the last week's presentation of IITF. So this is one of the considerations. So tingnan natin kung ano ang gagawin sa parents training. Pero para malaman natin kung anong meron sa parents training, dapat magkaroon tayo ng konting environmental scanning. Ano ba ang demographic profile ng ating mga parents? Ilan ba sa kanila ang professional? Ilan ba sa kanila ang hindi? Ilan ba sa kanila ang nagtatrabaho? Ilan po ang wala? So kasi kailangan po ito para ma-contextualize natin further yung ating training. Bakit kailangan din ang contextualization sa training? Kasi limited po ang gathering. No? Limited po ang gathering. If I'm not mistaken, for GCQ areas, the gathering is only limited to 5 face-to-face. So with that, kailangan nating maggrupo si parents. Kailangan din natin maggrupo si parents at ma-identify kung sino yung magagaling para ma-strategize natin, sa zone na ito, si parent A, pwedeng mag-parent leader. No? Pwedeng mag-parent leader. Okay? Now, also, parents and teachers partnership or parents and teachers could actually partner to develop materials that will be used by our students. What are these materials? Yung ating mga counting sticks, yung ating mga chips, yung ginagamit natin sa number sense. No? Dito po sa link na ito at sa QR code na ito, nandito po ang listahan ng UNICEF patungkol doon sa mga materials na pwedeng magamit ng mga bata at pwedeng gawin. No? Ano itong school in a box? Okay? Ano itong school in a box? Ito po ay nakuha ko sa isang news wherein Navotas City Government distributed students learning kits. They call it school in a box. And about 2 days ago, I called up a friend who is a learning education specialist from Plan Philippines na na-stranded po ngayon sa Catbalogan City. Sabi niya, may plan pong ganyan ang Plan Philippines. So in other words, there is a need to create these community collaborations of government organizations and non-government organizations for this matter. Okay? So, also, pwede din po nating tingnan yung konsepto ng community schools. Ano ba yung konsepto ng community schools? Way back in 1945, pagkatapos po ng gera, no? The Philippines was actually one of the highlight in the educational system all over the world when the Cold War was actually happening because of our concept of community schools. So pwede nating balikan yon. Ano yung community schools? It is a strengthened community and school partnership. It is not different our school-based management system. But the difference primarily is anchored on the fact that both parents and students are learning. No? May mga okasyon na pati si nanay at si tatay ay learner din doon sa konteksto ng community schools. So pwede pong balikan ito doon. All right. Now, panghuli, pwede din pong tingnan natin o kailangan nating mag-produce ng supplemental worksheets. Bakit po? Baka po kasi kulang yung nandoon sa module. Baka kailangan ng enrichment, baka kailangan ng reinforcement, no? So pwede nating tingnan yung konteksto ng yung paggawa ng supplemental worksheets. Sir, paano po gumawa ng supplemental worksheets? Naalala ko po way back in 2005, habang ako po ay isang practice teacher, no? In San Jose National High School. That was after, I think that was my third shift. My first shift was in Leyte High. My second shift was in Palo National High School. My third shift was in San Jose National High School. And I was teaching grade 7 first in San Jose National High School. Mayroon pong Project Enrich, no? Kung saan ang ginagamit na strategiya ay active learning strategies. Yun pong Project Enrich na yon, gumawa po sila ng modules with so many procedures to teachers on how to create the materials. So pwede pong kaykayin yung mga baul natin sa DepEd at tingnan ulit ito at gamitin as a benchmark or as a supplement as worksheets doon sa modules na gagawin. Okay. Now let me move forward also. Okay. Now, also, as mentioned kanina, no, 2 days ago, I called up a friend from Plan Philippines. She's a classmate of mine in UP in a cognate on PhD psychology. So, sabi niya, I'm going to send to you a material. No? So this is a part of her material that I lifted to emphasize universal standards on how we are supposed to teach children. So una, we have to help children learn problem-solving techniques, questioning and experimenting to solve problems. Help children. Who will help? The teachers and the parents. We have to give children references with real objects. Okay? That's a keyword there. Real objects that they can handle and use for counting and experimenting. Bakit po kailangan real objects? No? Because children are known to be kinesthetics or kinesthetic learner. Some are known to be tactile learners. So if they're not going to use their senses, the chances of them learning is actually minimal. So, Plan Philippines is also forwarding some recommendations. Developed activities around nature. So ito po yung isa sa pwedeng tingnan, no? Plan cooking activities related to children's interest. So pwedeng mag-measure ng mga cooking, ng mga ingredients, no? Sir, paano pag walang standardized na measuring cup? You can fix it to a simple cup at home, no? Measurement before it was standardized is arbitrary, and the history of mathematics can show and will attest to that. So long as it is clear what measurement device is used, pwedeng sabihin ng bata, ang ginamit ko po ay mug. No? Sa pagluto ng kare-kare, kailangan ng isang mug ng kalabasa. Okay? So, pwedeng ganun. So use it as a measurement device because the objective is for students to have a sense of measurement. The objective is not for the student to use a standardized metric of measure. Hindi pa po ganun yon kasi nasa numeracy level pa lang tayo. Okay? Now, encourage water and play to teach concepts of volume, measuring, density, etc. Utilize every opportunity to count objects and use numbers. Plan simple field trips around the community where it is allowed by IITF and specifically purposed to stimulate the concepts of learning and integration of concepts. Okay? All right. Now, as an addition to that, meron din tayong tinatawag, kanina present ko na kailangan natin gumawa ng additional worksheets. I'm just going to flaunt this idea, no? And what is this idea? The notion of lesson studies. Bakit kailangang ipasok ko ito? Kasi po, ito po ay pambihirang pagkakataon. No? We're hoping and praying that this will not happen again in our lifetime, this pandemic. But this situation right now, we are on an emergency mode of transition to remote teaching and learning is a very, very unprecedented. ito po ay isang pambihirang pagkakataon na dapat ma-document natin. Okay? At paano yung documentation dyan? Pasok po ang lesson studies. Ano yung konsepto ng lesson studies to simplify it, no? Para hindi masyadong magulo. At pwede natin itong pagtugunan later on under the research department of DepEd Region 8. Lesson studies may start by creating groups or clusters of teachers who are teaching the same subjects or courses. In itself, it's a support mechanism. But beyond that, it is a feedback board wherein teachers could actually interact and discuss about learning of their children and think of possibilities on how they can actually come up with intervention materials to assist learning, particularly in numeracy. Okay? And of course, nasabi ko na kanina, we can go back to previous and existing programs of the Department of Education as reference. All right, moving ahead. Nasaan na ako? Nasa feedback mechanism na ako. Do activities in the module reflect home or real life situation? What are the opportunities for teacher-student interaction for feedback mechanism? Tinanong ko ang isang guro sa UPIS at kasalukuyang nasa NISMED din. At isang ina, no, na mayroong mga bata na nag-aaral din na primary level. At tanong ko sa kanya, kung modular ang gagawin ng DepEd, K-3, what are your reservations? Ang sagot niya po, how to provide feedbacks. Mode of distribution of modules. Hindi ko na yun tutugunan yung mode of distribution of modules, but how to provide feedbacks. Child psychology demands that feedback should be immediate for this level of development sa ating mga children. The immediate feedback will, one, affirm students' performance and will eventually make teaching meaningful. Kasi alam ng bata kung saan siya tama. Doon naman sa mali, makukorekt mo agad. Remember, crucial po ang correction factor dito when we are teaching children. Because pag hindi siya makorekt agad, this will develop to misconceptualization in mathematics, which the literature shows is the root of what? The root of stigma against mathematics. Okay? So dapat makorekt agad. Okay? So anong ibig sabihin ng immediate feedback? Okay? Immediate means the next day. So sir, paano yun gagawin kung next day? All right, we will go into that later. And then of course, because there is a feedback mechanism, the teacher can actually reflect on learning as well and make learning more meaningful, okay? And make teaching more meaningful because pag may problema, kaagad pwedeng gawa ng teacher ng solusyon. Kaagad pwedeng matugunan ng teacher. Isa po ito sa downside po ng modular instruction kasi mahirap po ang feedback mechanism. Kailangang strategize ng maayos. Unlike po sa online learning, I'm going to share to you one thing. This is presented with permission of the mother that I reached out last night kasi kahapon itong kapitbahay namin sa QC, si Boss R2, si R2D2. First day ng kanyang online class. And look at him. Sa bahay niya yan, ha? No? In-structure ng nanay niya yung kanyang area. Pinag-uniform siya ng nanay niya. Sabi, bakit mo pa pinag-uniform, Madel? Sabi niya, hindi naman requirement, pero para ma-feel nung bata. Magkaroon yung bata ng normalcy. Okay? So nag-uniform ang bata. So bawat oras na may online o may klase na si R2 online, nag-uniform siya. Now, dito po kasi may guro po nakausap si R2 dito. No? So because may guro siya nakausap, feedbacking is quick. Unlike in modular, may lag po ng konti. We distribute the module, we strategize kailan babalikan. So that is something na kailangang pag-usapan. So allow me to continue on coming up with strategies on how feedback mechanism could be operationalized. Okay. Paano ito ma-operationalized? Reinforce home visits. I'm strongly recommending home visits. And with the pronouncement about an hour ago that limited face-to-face is already available, this is basically feasible. So dapat malimitan ang home visit ni teacher. 2, creation of performance tracker and recognition board. Ano po itong performance tracker and recognition board? I thought of just simply coming up with a chart, no? A chart with a list of competencies na dapat gawin ng bata. Okay? Now, ito pong chart na ito, ipaskin nyo doon sa bahay. So that habang nag-home visit kayo, pwede nyo siyang gawing checklist. At para doon sa ating mga kabataan, masayang-masaya sila pag natatakan sila ng star, pwedeng doon yung itatak sa tracker board yung star. Okay? So pwedeng gawing ganon. So pwedeng mag-coordinate kay nanay na, nay, gawa tayo ng ganito ang format. No? Ilagay natin ito dito. Tapos ito yung mga competencies na dapat makuha ng bata. Ito yung mga activities na kanyang gagawin. Okay? So iikot po ako na, ikukulit ko, tapos magsastamp po ako doon pag okay yung kanyang performance. At mag-hi hello din ako kay Junior. Okay. Now, also, parent-teacher conference. Para doon sa mga problematic talaga, pwedeng kausapin si nanay at turuan kung paano ma-assist yung bata. Kasi kahit kanina nasabi ko, magkakaroon tayo ng parents training, for example, the implementation will still be different. So on the monitoring aspect, kung makita natin na kailangan pa talaga ni nanay ng additional reinforcement para ma-assist yung bata, no? As evidenced by the outputs of the child, then you have to intervene. You have to talk to the parent. And lastly, one-on-one intervention. This is for those students na talagang medyo challenge na ang circumstance. So you can do one-on-one tutoring. Pwedeng sa bahay, pag hindi available si nanay na samahan o hatid yung bata sa eskwelahan, or pwede na namang sa eskwelahan din with proper scheduling. Okay? All right. Now, so the bottom line here is this can only be done if minimal face-to-face is allowed. No? Yung creation of performance and recognition board tracker, pwede yon, no? Kahit hindi allowed yung minimal face-to-face kasi pwede namang mag-ikot si teacher. No? Parent and teacher conference, pwede din gawin yon, no? Kahit hindi allowed yung minimal face-to-face kasi pwede naman tayong gumawa ng booth kung saan pwede mag-usap. Parang hindi siya confession booth, ha? Pero parang ganun na rin, no? Na pwedeng mag-share mag-usap si parent at saka si teacher. But again, with the current development, we are very pleased to know that because minimal face-to-face is now allowed, there is a greater probability, no, that all of this is actually doable for that matter. All right. Okay. Now, teaching and learning K-3 numeracy must begin by tapping the primary biological abilities, such as language, supplanted with images through concrete examples and with degree of encouragement, sufficient practice or drills and feedback mechanism. Yan yung sinabi ko kanina. And we will not alter that. We will keep that because that is what is theoretically sound. That is what is supported by the theories of the mind and by practice in general. What we will do, as what I've mentioned a while ago, is simply to operationalize that. So in Capsule, we operationalized teaching and learning K-3 numeracy in the new normal through strong partnerships among teachers. This is a common theme that we would like to echo. Strong partnership among teachers, involvement of parents, community and other organizations in the spirit of bayanihan. Okay? So we need this as an enabling mechanism. Now, tomorrow, I will still be joining our participants as well. I think the same group of participants. And more of the strategies on how will do assessment, which includes formative and summative, will be presented tomorrow. So medyo 2 oras tayo bukas ng umaga at 9 to 11. So medyo marami-rami ang ating pag-uusapan doon. But in the interest of time and for me to accommodate questions, let me end my slide by saying, let us use this event as an opportunity to transcend teaching and learning process to a level of sustainability. Bakit ko po yun nasabi? Tanggalin niyo man po si COVID-19. It is a context of this region that in every year, oftentimes at that, there would always be suspension of classes. Why is it that there will be a suspension of classes? Because we are frequented by typhoons and natural disasters. We have lived with that. So let us use this opportunity as we transition to remote teaching and learning using modular approach as a fallback mechanism. Should our region be constricted with mobility, not by COVID-19, but by other circumstances of natural disasters and typhoons. So at least sa susunod po na panahon na mayroong malakas na bagyo, advance notice na, signal number 1, sasabihin mo agad, okay, refer to these modules in advance while you stay indoors, while nasa bahay kayo, gawin nyo na po ito so that when we come back, we are just going to work it out to be on the same page. So again, let's look at this as an opportunity for sustainability in the teaching and learning process in the context of the circumstances of our region. With that note, lubos pa ako nagpapasalamat sa ating mga tagapakinig and of course to the Department of Education Regional Office 8. At this point, I still have 6 minutes and I'm willing to entertain some questions. Sir Dean?
Wow, that was a superb session, Dr. Villas. The infographics practically drive home the key message that educators need to constantly fine-tune their practices in ensuring that appropriate interventions are given to the learners. It was great to see firsthand these practical but innovative suggestions which our teachers can try. And let's now proceed to our short Q&A. So as Dr. Villas said, he can entertain a couple of questions. So if you've got some queries, clarifications, we are encouraging you to do so because this is your chance to throw a question to our experts and they're willing to help us. All right, let's start the ball rolling. If we've got queries out there, you may type in your questions using the chat box. All right. Let's see what we have here on screen. Initially, wow, not questions, but wow, superb, excellent speaker. I agree, great so far. And the good thing is, Sir Jonas will still be with us tomorrow. So I hope everyone will be back. And we will also
yes. Do you know, if I may add, actually tomorrow I'm really like trying to exert a lot of effort on assessment and evaluation because it's my turf, no? Because I'm basically schooled to do research and evaluation encompasses testing, measurement, evaluation, psychometrics, and so on. So I'm trying to, in as much detail as possible, create matrix. Let's say, how are we going to cascade portfolio assessment? No? How are we going to plan it out? What can you do? I started with working with grade 7 math, pero parang hindi ko mauubos. Parang isang period lang doon ang nagawan ko na. But then again, I hope that the rest of you will stay tuned for us tomorrow because assessment is a very important component at this time. So again, baka may tanong po dyan, no? Meron pa po tayong 4 minutes. Inurasan ko po ang sarili ko. 3 minutes and 56 seconds.
Okay, so you've got questions. Kindly post it here in our chat box. Mukhang wala pa tayong mga questions para mga...
I think walang question. Naintindihan masyado.
Ang galing, sir. Wala akong masabi. Really.
Great, Sir Jonas.
Masaya din ako kasi nakapag-uniform ako, imagine mo.
Okay, mukhang
Wala talaga question, Sir Dean.
last 2 minutes. Come on, guys. We've got some, just
Even in the FB Live, wala rin.
yes, Sir Joy.
Okay,
Even in
siguro,
the FB Live.
siguro Sir Joy, no, at saka Sir Dean, papagpahingahin na natin sila because actually we've extended quite a time already. It's already
Yeah.
4:45 in the afternoon. At any rate, I emailed to Chod my PowerPoint presentation, but because
sir.
there were changes on the last minute before I presented, I will email again to Joy
Yes, sir.
the exact excerpts of the presentation that I had this afternoon so that pwede pong ipamigay, no? Pwede pong ipamigay ito at para makita ng ating mga pamunuan doon sa ating mga paaralan, sa ating mga school districts kung paano ma-strategize, no? Sabi ko nga kanina, let's not reinvent the wheel. We are a region who have survived Yolanda. Of course, we will survive COVID-19.
Yes.
Okay? We will
Yes.
survive COVID-19. This is a matter of how we work together and we strategize things. And we have proven that to the world. Okay? So, siguro with that as a parting word, let's call it a day. I don't know, with Dean and Joy.
All right, just one final statement to reiterate what I said this morning. Quality education will never cease to thrive if great leaders never cease to try. And this has been your host. I'm Dean Adriano, and together with me is Sir Joy and our Chief of the Curriculum and Learning Management Division, Dr. Rose Gino. We're all ears from start to finish. Again, thank you, Sir Dr. Jonas Mulias. That was a splendid presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you once again. And see you tomorrow.
And to everyone out there, thank you so much. And please don't forget, check your chat box, the evaluation link. Kindly accomplish it. All right. Thank you very much.
We have, by the way, we have the same link for tomorrow for Zoom, and we will be having another link for our FB Live. Just wait lang tomorrow for the FB Live. Okay?
Okay. Depend
Thank you.
Originate. Thank you so much. This has been your host, Dean Adriano. We're signing off. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.